Marcus had no idea that changing his own Wi-Fi password would lead to the cops knocking on his door at midnight. But there they were, two officers, flashlights in hand, standing on his porch like he had just committed a federal crime. And behind them, Karen, his next-door neighbor. Arms crossed, face red with fury, grinning like she had personally solved the biggest cybercrime of the century. "Sir, we've received a complaint about unauthorized hacking," one officer said, barely suppressing a yawn. "Your neighbor claims you illegally accessed her Wi-Fi and tampered with her internet connection." Marcus blinked. Once. Twice. Then he laughed. Hard. This had to be a joke. A really, really bad one. But Karen's face said otherwise. She wasn't laughing. She was standing there with the confidence of someone who had caught a master criminal in action, her oversized sunglasses still perched on her head even though it was pitch black outside. "Ma'am," Marcus said, rubbing his temples, "you're telling me that I hacked your Wi-Fi? The Wi-Fi that I pay for? In my own house?" "Yes." Karen snapped. "I don't know how, but you did. My son and I have been using it just fine for months, and then suddenly, boom, no internet. And the only thing that changed? You messed with it." Marcus's brain short-circuited for a second. She had just admitted to freeloading off his Wi-Fi? Right in front of the police? The officer sighed, clearly regretting every life decision that led him to this moment. "Sir, could you explain what happened?" Marcus exhaled. "Hey, here's what happened. My internet was running slow, so I checked my router settings. Turns out there were multiple devices connected that weren't mine. I changed my password. That's it. That's literally all I did." Karen gasped as if he had just confessed to arson. "Exactly. You cut off our access without warning. That is illegal." Marcus looked at the officers, waiting for them to shut this down. Instead, they exchanged a glance, probably deciding whose turn it was to deal with whatever this was. The older one finally turned to Karen. "Ma'am, your neighbor has every right to change his password. It's his internet." Karen's face twisted into something ugly. "No, you don't understand. This is a community. We share things here. And now my son can't even do his homework." Marcus almost choked. "Homework? Your son spends all night screaming into a gaming headset and trash-talking strangers online." Karen gasped again as if he had just insulted the queen herself. "How dare you?" At this point, even the cops looked like they wanted to be anywhere but here. The younger officer sighed and gave Marcus a tired look. "Sir, do you want to press any charges?" Marcus stared at him, confused. "Press charges? Against her?" "Technically," the officer said, scratching the back of his head, "if she's been using your internet without permission, that could be considered theft." Karen's eyes widened. "What?" Marcus took a deep breath, weighing his options. As tempting as it was, he had a better idea. "No, I don't want to press charges. I just want to sleep." The officers nodded, clearly relieved, and turned to Karen. "Ma'am, stop using your neighbor's Wi-Fi without permission. If you have an issue, call your service provider. Have a good night." Karen, still sputtering in rage, stormed off. But not before pointing a trembling finger at Marcus. "This isn't over." The moment she was gone, Marcus shut the door, muttering, "Oh, I know." The next morning he woke up to a new nightmare. It started with his mailbox, stuffed with angry handwritten notes from Karen, each one more dramatic than the last. One read, "Shame on you for destroying community spirit." Another said, "God sees what you did." But the real kicker? A fake petition titled, "Make Marcus Give Back the Wi-Fi," with Karen's name signed a dozen times in different handwriting. Then came the neighborhood rumors. At the coffee shop, two elderly women whispered behind their cups as he walked by. "That's him," one muttered. "The hacker." At the grocery store, a dad yanked his kid away from Marcus like he was some kind of criminal. Even the mailman gave him a look of pity. Marcus couldn't believe it. Karen had actually convinced half the neighborhood that he was some evil tech wizard who had locked them out of the sacred Wi-Fi network. And then, things got even stranger. That night, while double-checking his security settings, he noticed something weird. A device was still connected to his network. But it wasn't Karen's. Marcus frowned. That was impossible. He had reset the password. Twice. There was no way anyone else should still be connected. His heart started pounding. Someone was inside his network. Curious and a little nervous, he traced the device's activity. Whoever it was, they weren't just using his Wi-Fi. They were doing something. Files. Logins. Transactions. Something shady was happening. And then he saw it. The IP address. The location wasn't from his house. It was coming from Karen's. Marcus's stomach dropped. Someone in Karen's house wasn't just stealing Wi-Fi. They were hiding something big. Marcus sat in front of his computer staring at the screen. The IP address was definitely coming from Karen's house. At first he thought it might be a mistake, but the logs didn't lie. Someone in that house wasn't just stealing Wi-Fi, they were up to something shady. His curiosity turned into suspicion. He knew Karen was a pain, but this was different. This wasn't just entitlement. This was illegal. He had to find out what was going on. He decided to set a trap. He reopened his Wi-Fi network but disguised it under a different name, something generic like free public Wi-Fi. Then he enabled a tracking program that would allow him to monitor exactly what was being accessed. If someone from Karen's house connected, he would know immediately. It took less than 10 minutes before the mystery device popped up again. Whoever it was, they weren't just browsing the internet. They were accessing accounts, banking information, and even cryptocurrency wallets. Marcus's eyes widened. This wasn't just freeloading. This was hacking. Marcus felt his stomach twist. If someone in Karen's house was running illegal operations from his network, this could be serious. Could even get him in trouble if authorities traced it back. He needed proof. He watched as the device connected to a private server. Something beyond just casual browsing. Whoever was behind this knew what they were doing. At this point, Marcus knew he couldn't handle this alone. He needed to confront Karen, but he had to be careful. Marching over there with accusations wouldn't work. Karen would just deny everything and twist it to make herself the victim. So he printed out the connection logs, the timestamps, and a detailed report of the unknown device's activity. She wanted to scream at him again, fine. But this time he had evidence. When he knocked on her door, Karen answered with a glare. "Oh, look who it is. Come to apologize." Marcus held up the papers. "We need to talk." Karen rolled her eyes. "Oh, what now? Did I breathe too loud? Did my lawn offend you?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Someone in your house is hacking accounts using my Wi-Fi." Karen blinked. For a second her face actually looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Marcus handed her the papers. "Look. These logs show a device connecting from your house. It's been accessing financial data, personal logins. This isn't just about Wi-Fi anymore, Karen. This is serious." Karen skimmed the papers, frowning. Then she scoffed. "This is ridiculous. I don't even know what half of this means." Marcus studied her face. She wasn't lying. She really had no idea. That meant someone else in her house was behind this. And then, as if the realization hit her at the same time, her expression changed. Her eyes narrowed and she turned sharply toward the stairs. "Brad!" she yelled. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Oh no. Footsteps pounded from upstairs and a teenage boy appeared at the top of the staircase. Brad, Karen's son, looked about 17, wearing headphones around his neck and gripping a laptop so tightly his knuckles turned white. Karen held up the papers. "Explain this." Brad's face turned pale. I don't know what that is." Karen's nostrils flared. "Marcus says someone in this house has been using his Wi-Fi too." She hesitated, squinting at the papers. "Something about hacking?" Brad swallowed. "That's stupid. I don't know anything about that." Marcus noticed the way Brad was gripping his laptop like it was his life support. The way his eyes darted toward the front door. He was nervous. Too nervous. Karen narrowed her eyes. "Bradley. Give me the laptop." Brad took a step back. "Mom, no." Karen's tone sharpened. "Yow." Panic flickered across Brad's face. "It's mine. You can't just." Karen lunged forward, snatching the laptop out of his hands before he could react. She clutched it like a prized possession and stormed down the stairs. Brad looked like he was about to pass out. Marcus braced himself as Karen flipped the laptop open, her lips pursed. "All right, let's see what's so important that you..." She stopped mid-sentence. Her face twisted into an expression of pure shock. Brad took a step back toward the stairs. "Mom, please, I can explain." Karen's eyes snapped up, and for the first time since Marcus met her, she looked genuinely terrified. "What is this?" she whispered. Marcus peered over her shoulder. The screen displayed a list of stolen accounts. Streaming services, online banking logins, credit card information. All under different usernames. Brad had been hacking people's private data. Marcus swore under his breath. He knew it was bad, but this was felony-level bad. Karen turned slowly toward her son, her voice shaking. What have you been doing? Brad was already backing up. It's nothing, okay? Karen's voice rose. You stole people's accounts? Brad's panic turned defensive. It's not like that. It's just streaming accounts. People share those all the time. Marcus crossed his arms. Oh yeah. And the banking logins? The cryptocurrency wallets? You were stealing money. Karen looked like she was about to faint. Her face had gone completely pale. Brad, they can trace this back to us. Brad opened his mouth, then shut it. He knew. He had known this whole time. For the first time ever, Karen was speechless. She dropped the laptop on the table like it was on fire. Oh my God. Marcus sighed. Yeah. That's what I said. Karen was shaking her head violently. No, this isn't happening. This is your fault. She whirled on Marcus, her voice shrill. You did something to make this happen. You've been out to get us since the day you moved in. Marcus just stared at her. Are you serious? Karen pointed a shaking finger at Brad. Tell me the truth. Tell me Marcus hacked your laptop. Brad's face twisted. Mom, what? No, that's not. Karen clapped her hands over her ears. I don't want to hear it. We are fixing this. We are going to make this go away. Marcus let out a dry laugh. Karen, this isn't a parking ticket. Your son has been committing actual crimes. Karen ignored him, pacing frantically. Then she turned to Marcus with a sudden manic look in her eyes. You don't have to tell anyone. Right? We can just forget this happened. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Oh, you're kidding. Karen's voice dropped to a whisper. I can bake you something. I make great cookies. Marcus blinked. I'm allergic to gluten. Karen clenched her fists. Fine. I'll pay you. Marcus exhaled. Lady. Your son is committing cybercrimes. The police would have found out eventually. Karen's face twisted in fury. You think you're so smart, don't you? And then, as if the universe had impeccable comedic timing, a loud knock echoed from the front door. Brad went completely still. Karen's eyes darted toward the door. Her breathing hitched. Marcus folded his arms. Well, that was fast. Karen's whole body tensed. You didn't. Marcus just smirked. The knock came again, louder this time. And then a deep voice called out. This is the FBI. We need to speak with Bradley Smith. Karen gasped. Brad looked like he was about to pass out. Marcus? He just smiled and sipped his coffee. The room went dead silent. Karen looked like she had seen a ghost. Brad stood frozen, his face pale as a sheet, his hands twitching slightly at his sides. The knock at the door came again, heavier this time, more impatient. The deep voice on the other side repeated itself, each word sinking into the room like an anchor. This is the FBI. We need to speak with Bradley Smith. Karen's eyes darted between the door and her son, her brain visibly short-circuiting. Then, without warning, she lunged forward and grabbed Brad by the arm, hissing in a panicked whisper. Go to your room. Delete everything. Now. Brad yanked his arm free, shaking his head rapidly. Mom, that's not how this works. They already know. Karen spun toward Marcus, her expression shifting from fear to sheer desperation. You did this. You called them. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Lady, your kid's been committing actual cybercrimes for who knows how long. The only thing I did was stop him from using my Wi-Fi to do it. Karen's face twisted with fury, but before she could unleash another tirade, another voice came from behind the door. Mrs. Smith, we know you're inside. We suggest you open up. We have a warrant. Marcus let out a low whistle. Oh, a warrant. Yeah, that's bad news. Karen let out a high-pitched noise that was somewhere between a shriek and a whimper. Her hands were shaking, her breathing shallow. Then, in a move that could only be described as completely deranged, she grabbed the laptop off the table and threw it toward Marcus. Take it. It's yours, she shouted. Marcus barely caught it before it hit the floor. He stared at her, dumbfounded. What? Karen waved her arms wildly. They can't find it here. It's yours now. You planted it. Marcus exhaled slowly, trying to process just how deep her delusions ran. Are you actually trying to frame me right now? Karen's eyes were wild. You had access to our Wi-Fi. That means you could have done it. You're the hacker. Marcus stared at her. Karen, you literally just screamed, delete everything 5 seconds ago. Brad groaned, running a hand over his face. Mom, stop. Please. Karen grabbed her son's shoulders, shaking him slightly. You don't say another word. We deny everything. The knocking turned into pounding. Last warning. Open the door or we're coming in. Karen let out a shaky breath, turned toward the door and took a single step before doing what everyone in the room least expected. She sprinted toward the back of the house. Marcus blinked. Brad's jaw dropped. Then before anyone could process it, Karen jumped through the backyard window. Glass shattered everywhere. A loud thud followed, along with a groan. Marcus peeked outside and saw her lying on the grass, tangled in her own garden gnome display, moaning in pain. Oh my God, he muttered. She actually did it. Brad slapped a hand to his forehead. She's lost her mind. Before Marcus could say anything, the front door burst open. FBI agents swarmed inside, weapons drawn, their movements swift and precise. Within seconds, Brad had his hands in the air, looking like he was about to cry. One agent grabbed his laptop from Marcus's hands, while another moved toward the backyard window, staring in disbelief at Karen, who was still groaning in the grass. The agent said, we might need medics for that one. Karen groaned louder. I'm innocent. One of the agents rolled his eyes. Mrs. Smith, you just jumped out of a window. I panicked, she whined. Marcus stood against the wall, watching the whole thing unfold like a live-action crime show. Brad was being restrained, the FBI was scanning through his laptop, and Karen was still moaning in her garden gnome pile. One of the agents finally turned to Marcus. You're the one who reported the unauthorized network activity? Marcus nodded. Yeah. Didn't expect it to escalate this fast, though. The agent flipped through a small notebook, glancing at the data they had already collected. Well, you weren't the only one. We've been tracking multiple fraud cases tied to Brad's activity. The guy's been hacking accounts across multiple states. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Wait. Multiple states. Brad let out a miserable groan. Oh, come on. Karen, still lying in the dirt, suddenly shouted. He's just a kid. You can't arrest a child. The agent closest to her sighed. He's 18, ma'am. He's legally an adult. Karen let out a noise that was somewhere between a sob and a screech. But he didn't mean to. Brad let out an exhausted sigh. Mom, stop talking. The agents ignored her and turned back to Marcus. We appreciate your cooperation. This could have gotten worse if it had gone unchecked. Marcus shrugged. I just wanted to change my Wi-Fi password. One of the agents chuckled. Well, you might have saved a lot of people from getting their identities stolen. Meanwhile, Karen was still thrashing in the dirt, pointing dramatically at Marcus. He's the real hacker. He framed my baby. One of the agents exchanged a look with his partner, then turned toward her with an exasperated sigh. Ma'am, we already have months' worth of evidence linked to your son's accounts. We've been investigating this for weeks. Karen's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Finally, she just slumped back in the grass. This is so unfair. Brad let out a long, deep sigh. Can I just go to jail now? The FBI agents finished their work, secured Brad's laptop and led him toward the door. Karen, now finally understanding that this was actually happening, scrambled to her feet and ran after them. Wait. I'll get a lawyer. I'll. The front door slammed shut behind them. Silence. Marcus let out a breath and looked around the now empty house. Glass shards from the windows sparkled on the floor. Karen's pile of complaint letters was still on the counter. And for the first time in weeks, the house next door was actually quiet. He exhaled slowly, then walked back to his house, locking the door behind him. For the first time since he had moved in, Marcus sat on his couch, opened his laptop and connected to his own Wi-Fi without worrying about anyone stealing it. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing with the news. Karen's house was empty. Brad was facing multiple felony charges. And Karen? She had been spotted loading a moving truck with the same furious expression she had worn every time she yelled at Marcus. By noon she was gone. As Marcus watered his plants in the front yard, one of his other neighbors, an elderly man named George, walked by and gave him a knowing nod. "So," George said, "I heard Karen had to move out." Marcus smirked. "Yep." George chuckled. "Guess that means you won." Marcus took a deep breath, enjoying the crisp, peaceful air of a Karen-free neighborhood. "Oh," he said, "I definitely won.